So you've probably heard the phrase, you are what you eat. And there's even another phrase going around now that is this, you are what you eat ate, meaning when you're consuming, say, like animal flesh and that cow, for example, has been fed on Skittles and corn, you're probably getting some Skittles and corn in your own diet when you eat that burger or that ribeye steak. But the idea behind you are what you eat can actually be kind of foggy for some people. I mean, it sounds good on paper when you're pouring yourself a bowl of peanut butter Captain Crunch and somebody says, oh, you are what you eat. But really, there is some physiological and anatomical truth to that saying. Because when you look at an actual cell, that cell has a membrane around it. The membrane is responsible for allowing things to come in and out of the cell, and it allows for proper function of a cell. Well, that membrane is comprised, among other things, primarily of fats. And it's comprised of fats that you consume from your diet. This means that how healthy the cell membrane is, how flexible the cell membrane is, how permeable the cell membrane is to nutrients is completely dependent on the type of, specifically, fats that are in your diet. So, if your diet is, let's say, high in what are called omega-6 fats, and specifically like damaged omega-6 fats, which you're going to find in vegetable oils that are all too common these days, like corn oil, canola oil, safflower oil, sunflower oil, etc. Or your diet is high in trans fats, which are slowly disappearing because they're getting outlawed, frankly, but you'll still find them in some potato chips, French fries, fried, packaged foods, etc. Or your diet is simply high in any type of fat that's been heated to high of a temperature or has been exposed to too high of a pressure. For example, olive oil that's gone far above 400 degrees and been fried multiple times, as you might actually get at many fancy restaurants and not even know about. What happens is the membrane winds up being comprised of those fats, and your cells actually do become what you ate, specifically with regard to oils and fats. So, how do you fight this battle? But there are two specific things that you can include in your diet to help you build the type of cells that you actually want inside your body. One is called DHA. You may have heard of it before, but it's a type of fat that's especially prevalent in neural tissue and brain tissue. Very important for things like cognitive performance, the ability of cells to speak to one another. And you find that in most cases in things like wild-caught fish and fish oil. And you'll find decent amounts of it in things like grass-fed beef as well. If you're trying to focus on more of like a vegan or a vegetarian approach, algae sources, surprisingly, are a decent source of DHA. Things like spirulina and chlorella. Now, seeds and nuts like flax seeds or chia seeds are often championed as good sources of DHA, but your body's ability to convert the fats in those into usable DHA is a little bit low. So I'm a big fan of including, for example, wild-caught fish and algae in your diet. Now, the other thing that is important to include in your diet is a high amount of that other type of fatty acid that I talked about, an omega-3 fatty acid. One of my favorite ways to get that is extra virgin olive oil. Avocados are another great source. Walnuts, olives, anything that you would tend to associate with a Mediterranean diet is usually a pretty good source of omega-3 fatty acids, and those omega-3s that you consume, along with the DHA that you consume, wind up to comprise your actual cell membranes. You become what you eat. It's pretty interesting to think about. So I have a takeaway for you that I want you to try out after you watch this video. It's one of my favorite things to do, and I travel just about everywhere with one of these things, and the other one is pretty easy to get your hands on just about everywhere. Number one is an avocado. Number two is really good extra virgin olive oil. Believe it or not, this can actually be a meal in and of itself. I'll often slice an avocado in half, drench it in olive oil, put a pinch of sea